Welcome back to my channel. I am IamUgie, part 2, continuing where I left off from. I would like to thank all the new visitors, if there are any new visitors or people new to my channel. This is a story, or my story, about my life, what I experienced growing up, what I went through as an adult, the effects of it affected me as an adult, um, struggling and battling with mental health, um, aka demons. I'm gonna just be honest, that's what they are, demons. Um, I will be talking and speaking about my life from my experience through abuse and trauma, bad parenting, um, being lost in the world, not knowing who you are, trying to find yourself. I believe that's what's going on with a lot of the youth today. They're lost. They had no one to look up. They have no one to look up to. Their living situation is critical, so they act out in many different forms and different ways, and don't realize that they're destroying their life before it even begins. So I'll continue where I left off, which was my father had received the insurance payout from our grandmother's death, or his adopted mother's death. Um, and I was told that we had real estate, or grandma had real estate or whatnot. And my father basically, he sold it all to get all the money. Um, so shortly after that, my father was known for driving brand new Cadillacs all the time. In the 90s, even once I was in foster care and I seen my father, he was always driving some type of Cadillac. But during those times, my father he had a girlfriend, and her nickname was JB. And this lady, well, my father had many girlfriends, but this was one of them. But this lady, she did not like my sister at the time for whatever reasons. But my father was how can I say it? I'll just say he wore a cape. He wore a cape when it came to women. So he would spend the money, I guess, on these women, and one of the main ones he used to spend the money on was JB. So he had purchased her a house somewhere in Cleveland. Um, at the time, and what he would do for me and my sister was he would buy a bunch of TV dinners, like the kid cuisines that had like the little penguin and stuff on it. I don't even know if they still make them, but this was his version of grocery shopping for us. He would buy a bunch of kid cuisines, fill up the freezer, fill up the refrigerator, get milk, some cereal, and then he would disappear for like weeks at a time, and then weeks would turn into months. And whenever he did pop back up, he would come back with like a shirt or mugs or something, like little stupid stuff for me and my sister from where he had been. So it would be like sometimes we'd get a mug and the mug was from the Bahamas. Or we'd get a shirt and it was from the freaking London or something. Like, we've been at home for weeks. We ran out of food, TV dinners, because we would eat it up. So my father would be gone for long stints of time and just leave me and I want to say my sister was about 14, 15 at the time. Um, Trying to take care of her 8-year-old brother with no parent in the house, no food in the house, because all the food would be gone. Me and my sister would be sitting there looking at each other, hungry. My sister, at times, I just say she did what she could to make sure her little brother ate. Um, Sometimes she didn't eat at all, just to make sure that I had something to eat. Sometimes we would just split whatever food we found, whether it was a Snickers or something like that. Whether we um, stole it from a store or whatever the case may be. Sometimes my father would be gone so long that the lights would get cut off in the house. So now we are in a house with no food and no electricity. My father would pop back up randomly, and he would come in the house and start fussing that the lights were out, and he would fuss and yell like it was our fault that the lights were turned off, that it's our fault that you were gone traveling and you didn't pay the bill, so that's our fault. So my father would go outside and go to the side of the house and cut the little red lock off and turn the power back on illegally. If it was like the weekend or something like that, and then um, Monday would come and he would pay the bill and they turn the lights back on. Sometimes when we ran out of food, I don't know how, but I'll just say, my sister would come up with money, and there was a little Chinese store called Hunan and Shaker. It used to be on Van Aken, and my sister would bring home like egg rolls and fried rice and stuff like that, and we would eat that. When my father was home, he was abusive to my sister in many ways. I'll just say that. My father was also sexually abusive to my other sisters as well. And at the time, I didn't know about them being abused. My father he was a sick man. He had a lot of demons. I'll say that he had a lot of demons. Continuing on going through school, I had always struggled academically in school. Even to this day, my spelling sucks, my grammar sucks. I don't. In reality, I don't really care, as long as I always tell people, you understood me, didn't you? That's all that matters. But always struggled in school academically because my brain could never function. How can a child function on school when he or she is going through so much mentally from home? Dealing with the fact of always thinking about missing your mother. I was missing my brothers, my sisters. I didn't know where they were at. They didn't know where me and my sister were at. being at home, no food, no electricity, um, dealing with the fact of being afraid to walk to and from school every day. So my sister, sometimes we would have like Oreos in the house in like a jar, but they were like stale. So, but my sister would, pack them in my lunch sometimes, just so I would have something to eat for lunch. And I always remembered being a kid, sitting in the cafeteria, eating my lunch, and I just have old stale Oreos to eat, and all these other kids around me would have all these nice lunches that their parents had packed. All these, it was predominantly a lot of white kids at the time. Uh, Shaker went through the whole integration process. I'm not going to get all into that, but it was more, I say Caucasian kids than black kids. I'll say that, and I would always sit and eat my food and stare at them and their food because they had the good lunches. The nice lunch meat sandwiches. They had the fruit snacks, the juice boxes, and then the worst day and the most embarrassing days of going to Lowmount School was when they had pizza party. And at the time it was Papa John's Pizza, and you had to take your little slip home, permission slip home, have your parents sign it, and they had to give you $2 or whatever to pay for your slice of pizza. Well, I was never able to participate in pizza parties because no father was home to sign it, and we didn't have no money. Me and my sister didn't have any money. So pizza days would come, and I'd just be sitting there eating my stale Oreos or some type of peanut butter and jelly sandwich if we had bread or whatnot, while all these other kids are enjoying pizza. I hated pizza day. No, during school, no one would, I had no one to really help me with homework. My sister would try to help me with my homework, and eventually, because she had her own homework to do and school to focus on, sometimes she would just do my homework for me. When Smoke was home, or my father, his nickname was Smokey, so you'll hear me refer to him as Smoke or Smokey. But when Smoke was home, instead of trying to actually help me with my schoolwork, he would just yell at me. Are you stupid, boy? And and he would do my work and do it, but I just couldn't grasp what was going on. And then him yelling at me just made me terrified of him even more because my father was violent. So when he was gone, it was kind of a relief for me because I know I didn't have to worry about him scolding me for asking him to help me with my homework. When one day, walking home from school, my I got beat up again. I was walking with this kid and who I thought was a friend, and young kids, and well, it's not really gonna say young kids because it still goes on today. Men don't know how to be men and stuff like that, and secure within themselves. So walking home from school, there was this girl. Don't remember her name, but I do remember it was a girl, and me and this kid had liked the same girl. So we was walking home from school. The girl was obviously with us. We're just kids. And all I said was, I like you. This guy just hauled off and punched me in my eye. And once again, because I was a non-violent country kid at the time, I didn't fight back. I didn't defend myself. I just took the beating. So I walked home from school, or continued to walk home from school from there. I was crying. I was all snotty and clothes all tore up and raggedy looking, and I just walked home. So as I was walking home, I thought about how much I hated being in Ohio. I hated living in Shaker, which was, they say it's the suburbs, but to me, suburb city is all the same to me, because country life is a lot different. But I hated the city life, and I was walking back home thinking about how much I hate it. Well, this day was kind of strange in a way, because I was walking home and then I seen Smoke. He had popped back up, and he was standing at the top of the hill on Delford in front of the house, and he had a bike, but I was too busy crying and trying to clean myself up, because I said, uh-oh, I'm really about to get in trouble now. So I walk up to the top, and Smoke was like, what happened? And I told him I got beat up. And he said, by who? I told him who the boy was. He said, do you know where he lived? I said, yeah. So Smoke grabbed me and threw me in the car, and he said, where's his house at? So we drove down the street to this kid's house, and my father jumps out and he knocks on the door, and he's beating on the door. Boom, 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 boom. The kid's father answers the door, and my father just went off, and he was like, you tell your kid to get in the car and y'all come up to my house and they're gonna fight. Your boy jumped on my boy, and they're gonna fight it out, and if not, they're gonna fight. Smoke and this guy's dad. That's what my dad basically had told him. So the guy was like, okay. So I'm just terrified, I don't know how to fight. So we get back up there, we go back to my house, and we go in the backyard, and my Smoke and this kid's dad are standing side by side. The kid who beat me up originally is looking scared. I'm looking scared. And, they were like, y'all two fight and get it out. So I was more terrified of my father than I was that kid. So I swung and I hit this kid as hard as I could, because I was terrified of my dad. And once I hit him, we kids rolling around in the dirt and the ground fighting, and Smoke yelling at me to, hit the kid, flip him over. It reminded me of like Calvin Candy off of Django, for those who've seen it. How he was like a blind and blind, flip him over, And me and this kid fought it out, and then they separated us and told us to shake hands. And we shook hands. And then this kid's father and my father sat there, smoked a cigarette, laughing. And then that was it. They left. Or the kid and his father left. And then my father told me, he was like, I'm going to show you how to throw a punch. And he was showing me how to throw a punch and this and that. But I wasn't really paying attention to it. I was just trying to grasp like what just happened. But my father showed me how to throw a punch. or was trying to show me how to throw a punch and do different stuff. But like I said, I wasn't really paying attention to him. I got on my little brand new bike he got me, and I was riding my bike. So that was that time. My father would disappear again, on and off, but during different times he would show up. My father would do I'd say his girl runs or his lady runs, where he would go and meet these different women all over Cleveland, and he would take me with him. So my father would put me in a car, and this was in early 90s. So 91, maybe 92. No, I would say between 91. My father would put me in a car with him, and we would drive all over Cleveland, and he would meet up with different women and go do what he does as a man. But he would leave me in a car, and a child sitting in the car for hours at a time, even for just 30 minutes, 45 minutes at a time, a child can see things that a child shouldn't see, especially when you're in the inner city. And sometimes my father would drive to see some of these girls who lived in the hood in Cleveland. So sitting in the car, I can tell you that being in the car as a kid, I've seen shootings, I've seen fights, I've seen prostitutes, I've seen the drug dealers, stuff like that. Being a kid, kids should never be exposed to that, or they're exposed to that environment, especially when you're leaving that child in a car for hours at a time so you can go and have sex or do what you do. One time, my father drove. We were in Cleveland, and we were near a bridge. This bridge in Cleveland has faces on it. And I remember the faces on the bridge, but my father had parked on the bridge, and some other lady pulled up and picked my father up. And he got out the car and he said, "I'll be back in a little bit." And my father got in the car and left. And as I'm sitting there, some people walked by, and two guys walked by, and they got to an argument, and they started fighting outside the car. I'm in the passenger seat looking out the window, terrified, watching what's going on, and they all up on the car fighting. They knocked off the outside rearview mirror, passenger side rearview mirror. They were all on the hood of my dad's car. They were squabbling. And then they walked off. It was people that would walk by and look inside the car, and then they would keep walking. Then a car pulls up. As I'm sitting there, and a car pulls up, it slams on the brakes, and this guy jumps out of the driver's seat, and he's angry. He's like, "Ugh." He pulls this girl from the passenger seat out of the car, and he punches her in her face like multiple times, like she was a man. She had a gold chain on around her neck and a white tank top. Let's call them wife beaters, I guess, but he had a tank top. And he snatched the chain off her neck and tore her, and she was trying to run to get away, and he grabbed her and tore her tank top. He punches her again, but then he grabs her and hangs her over the bridge. And he's holding her, yelling at her, "I'll kill you, B, I'll kill you, I'll drop you." And she is screaming, and I'm in the car terrified watching this. Fear just came over me. It was like an elephant or something sitting on my chest. So I just screamed. After I screamed, I guess I screamed so loud that he could hear my scream or whatever, because he looked back down the bridge towards the car, and he pulled her back over the bridge, and then he threw her back in the passenger side of the car, threw her back inside, slammed the door, walked around, and then sped off down the bridge. I was so terrified that I tried to climb underneath the dashboard in the car. So in the passenger seat, I got out the seat, was trying to get down underneath the dashboard because I didn't want that guy to come do something to me. And I stayed there until my dad got back, and I was so terrified that listening to all the noises around me, the cars drive by, hearing people, that I stayed down underneath the dash. I did not want to come up for nothing, and my smoke eventually returned some time later, and when he grabbed the door handle of the car, I screamed because I didn't know who it was or what was going on. I was scared. And he opened the door. He was like, "Boy, what the F wrong with you?" And I was just sitting there shaking. Like, literally, I was physically shaking. And he could see something was wrong with me, but instead of being concerned about what was wrong with me, he looked and he instantly blamed me. "You broke my D mirror, And I'm saying, "I didn't break your mirror." I said there was a fight outside the car. The mirror was knocked off, and I explained to him what all I had seen. I said some guy beat her up and dangled a lady off the bridge. And all he said, he looked at me with it was like a devilish laugh or grin. With like, I can't really imitate it, but he looked at me and he laughed and he said, "Welcome to the city." And then we drove off. And as we drove off, he turned the radio on, and that song "Soul to Soul," "However Do You Want Me," came on the radio. And to this day, I hate that song because whenever I hear it, it instantly takes me back to that time, to where I'm this little 8-9-year-old boy, in the car by himself. And even though I'm a grown man now, I'm 43, but if I hear that song in my mind, mentally, I'm that little child all over again. But he drove off, and we went to a barbecue place called Hot Sauce Williams and got barbecue, and that was that day. Um, Let me see. I gotta check my talking points here. So being left in the car, like I said, you see a lot of stuff, especially when you're in the inner city. You'll see everything from drug addicts, um, thugs, gang members, fights, shootings. And at this time, this was like around the height of the crack era in Cleveland, I would say, which was, or coming up near the end of the crack era in Cleveland before everything took a downfall. Cleveland, being in Cleveland and being in the different locations in Cleveland, there was a big difference between the inner city and Shaker Heights at that time. It was like night and day, two different worlds. It was like flipping on a light switch. But I was all over the place, all over Cleveland as a child. Being stuck, made to sit in the car by myself and observe the environment around me while my father went out and did his things, his fornicating and whatever you want to call it, One day, when we were back in Shaker, I was home and Smoke was home, and I was outside, just riding my bike. And down the street on Delford, it used to be a yellow house. I remember this house because it was yellow with like brown doors. It was ugly, but it was about I want to say the third or fourth house from the corner of Delford and Lowmond. And I didn't like going down the street because going down the street or riding my bike down the street, somebody tried to take my bike once at the bottom of the street. And but they would always come out of this one house, and this one house had I would say, unsavory characters that lived there. I don't know if they were drug dealers or whatnot. Probably back in the 90s, 9 times out of 10, they probably were dealing drugs. Based upon the way they dressed and walked and the vehicles that were parked in the yard. But I did enjoy looking at their cars because they had, in the 90s or in any city, any time you see a nice car that's painted real nice and it got rims on it, and as a kid you like this stuff. And I saw this. They would have cars in the yard, and they had the gold rims on them, the gold Daytons, and with I believe the spinners on the side of the Daytons or the knockoffs, and they would, ride up and down the street, bass bumping and stuff like that. And as a kid, I liked seeing this. Well, one day I was sitting in front of the house, and the car one of their cars pulled out, and it was coming up this hill or up the street real slow. So I stopped riding my bike, and I was standing in front of the house watching them, and the car was coming up, and I'm looking at the wheels because the wheels used to come out the side of the car a little bit, and I was thinking about how cool this car was. And as the car got closer, the back window rolled down and somebody in the back pointed a handgun at me, and I froze. And I felt like Trey, all the boys in the hood, when I look back, when he was coming home with the barbecue and a little red sedan pulled up and rolled down the window, and he had a double barrel pointed at him. You know, I was a kid with a pistol being pointed at me by some guys I don't even know that live down the street. So as they ride by real slow and the person in the back, you know, pointed the pistol at me, everybody in the car is laughing, and then they keep driving and they drive off. So I run in the house and I tell Smoke what just happened to me. Smoke is like, "Who just pulled the gun on you? Who just pulled the gun on you?" You know, father of the year, I guess. But he grabs his gun out of the closet, and that was my first time seeing one of the guns my father had. And he grabs the gun and he comes outside and he said, "Where did they go?" And I said, "They went up the street that way." And I said, "But they lived down the street at this house." So my father grabs me and here we go, stomping down the street. We go walking down the street to this house, and I'm terrified of the outcome, but at the same time I feel kind of secure because I'm like, this is my dad, you know, and my dad's got a gun. And we go to this house and he beats on the door. No one answers because there's no one home. They left. So he looks around in their backyard. He looks in their garage, because they have the garages back then in Shakers used to have windows on the garages. So he was looking all in the garage, looking all in their backyard. Knocked on the side entrance, and then we walked back to the house and he called the police department. So the police came and I'm sitting there and I'm telling the police what had happened and what I had saw and experienced. And during the midst of me telling the police what had happened, the car came back, or the people came back, and they were coming back down the road. But the car in front of the house, we had about like 4 different police cars, because calling the police in the suburbs is different from calling the police in the inner city or in a black neighborhood, I should say. I remember one time that the police were called when I lived in the inner city, that we waited 45 minutes for the police to show. Well, here, Shaker, I felt like it only took them a minute or two, but they showed up. They had 4 cars in front of our house, and in the midst of me talking and telling the story, this car comes back down the road, and I said, "That's them right there." So the officer, you know, hops on, pulls out his little radio, hops on his radio, whatever, and before this car could make it back to the house where they lived at, 2 more police cars came from the bottom of Delford and Lomont and blocked the car off. The officers that were up at our house had flipped their cars around and blocked the car off from behind. And they searched the vehicles and stuff like that and had the guys all out of the car at gunpoint. And they had me go down and try to identify which one pulled the gun on me. Well, it was only 2 guys in the car during that time. So the people that were in the back seat, they were no longer in the car. So the guy who pointed the gun at me was not in the car, but the other 2 people that were in the car were still in the car, and they searched their vehicles and they did find drugs and a firearm, and they arrested I want to say the passenger and the driver. So that was that day, but a short time after their arrest, literally, it was probably, I want to say maybe a week later, um, their house was shot up. And I remember walking to school and seeing the bullet holes in the door of the house and stuff. And I didn't get to tell Smoke because he had disappeared literally, I want to say maybe a day or two before it happened. So when he did find out, it was like obviously weeks later when he had popped back up, check on us at the house or whatever, and give us more TV dinners. um, so as as a kid, parents sometimes don't think we expose our children to so much and we don't realize it because we're distracted and blinded by whatever we have going on in our life. But kids see a lot and are exposed to a lot they shouldn't be exposed to. We are supposed to protect our children. Not just protect them physically, but protect them spiritually. Sometimes we think the people that we leaving them around is okay to leave them around, and it's not. Sometimes your children are being exposed to stuff they shouldn't be exposed to. Sometimes they're being touched by family members or friends of family, people who you thought you could trust. So you have to protect children. You have to protect the children. As for me as a kid, I've seen a lot, but as a kid, I tell people, for me as a kid, I've seen a lot, but it's kind of like I tried to push it to the back of my mind because no matter how much wrong my father did, I still liked him. He was still my father. He was still my dad. And I just wanted my dad to be a dad. But I don't remember once my dad ever telling me that he loved me. I don't remember once my dad hugging me. If he did hug me, I think it was to impress one of the little girls or one of the women he were talking to. Like, oh yeah, this is my son right here. And, I raised him, because he used to always tell women these stories. Oh, I raised 8 kids. No, you didn't. I mean, I wouldn't say no, you didn't, but that's what I would think. Like, no, you didn't. You left us. And you brought me and my sister to Ohio, and you left the rest of them down there fending for themselves. But you just want to be accepted by your parents and be loved and be accepted. So no matter how much wrong they do, they're still your parents. And that's why some kids sit there and watch their parents do drugs, heroin, crack, and that child don't know they still their parents. The child still loves their parents. But that child is being destroyed in many different ways. So just protect your parents. My father continued to do his long stretches of absence in me and my sister's life, while we fended for ourselves for food and stuff like that. So I didn't have any rules to follow. it wasn't like, oh, you're not allowed to watch this, you wasn't allowed to do that. It was like I was starting to become a ruleless child because I could pretty much do whatever I wanted. There was nobody there. Um, so I would go to, there was this, on the corner was this old couple. Don't remember their names, but I used to go to their house and they would feed me. And they would ask, oh, where's your father? Because I guess they were friends with my grandmother. But they would ask where was Smoke at, and I'd tell them I don't know, because I didn't. And they would feed me dinner, lunch. Sometimes they would tell me to go get my sister and have her come by for dinner, and I would do that. During those times, there was a lady named Gracie who would also stop by. Sorry. There was a lady named Gracie who would also stop by. She was used to be a friend of my father's, but my father and her had a falling out. But she still came by to check on me and my sister, and she would bring us food, stuff like that. So basically, Gracie kind of looked out for us a lot. So I definitely appreciate that. But one day, I don't know if it was Gracie or if it was the people on the corner. But then again, everybody in that neighborhood or on that street knew that the people that lived at this house on Delford, the two kids there, they're home alone for weeks and months at a time by themselves. So, well, one day a social worker shows up, and it was a black male social worker, and he told me and my sister that we were being removed from the house. We are going to go stay with our brother. And at the time, I got really excited because I was like, "Oh, my brother!" But which one? Because I had so many different brothers, and I was excited, or I was excited at the time because I was going to be around my big brother or be placed with my big brother. So we were removed from my father's custody, and we were taken to my brother's house on Harvard. Now, my brother, I didn't know this then, but my brother told County that he was unstable. At the time, he was dealing with his own battles and his own struggles in life. And, he didn't want me and my sister to be around the environment that he was in. My brother was, he was in the streets. He was in the streets heavy. So being gang related and all the roughneck stuff, I've seen it all. But my brother didn't want to turn us away because they told my brother that, hey, you're the only closest living relative. And if you don't take them, we're basically going to put them in a system. And we'll be gone forever, basically. So my brother, not wanting to turn his family away, his little brother and little sister away, he took us in. And he did the best he could, or the best he knew how to do at that time. But my brother was, going through his own changes and trying to figure out his own life. And he was a young man. and all. So to my brother, it's like I I appreciate him trying, but I looked up to my brother, and yeah, we'll get into that. But I was taken, me and my sister was taken, and we were placed on Harvard. Everybody that's from Cleveland or anybody that's from Cleveland knows all about Harvard. They say HVD. So we'll get into that on part 3. I hope you guys continue to follow along and continue to listen to my story. I appreciate those who follow, share, hit the like button, subscribe. I will try to keep my videos coming out as frequent as possible. Once again, I am not a professional at this. I don't claim to be. I am not a perfect Christian. I don't claim to be. I am just me. I am IamUgie. So the story continues. Stay alone. Stay riding alone. Stay safe out there. And hope you stay tuned to part 3.